Tusen tack för beats.
I get you.
Oh yeah. Look at you.
Thanks. The more you know who you are and what you want, the less things upset you.
Good morning. How's everyone doing? Are we good? Linus, we have people online as well, not just here at Epicenter Store. Can they hear me? Just want to double check before we get into things.
We haven't heard anything from them yet, but it seems like it.
Give me a thumbs up or cut me off if they don't hear me.
I will do.
Very good welcome to all of you. Welcome to Epicenter Store. As you know, Epicenter Store is a community where some of the most inspiring thought leaders and innovators come together and rally around retail, solving big challenges that the entire industry is facing today, but also exploring new opportunities and new business models for growth. Every week we have talks, we have presentations, we have workshops, we have demonstrations from really inspiring people who are sharing more around the things that they're working with in the retail space. Sometimes innovations, could be also business model innovation, solving challenges, but also inspiring us and challenging us to think differently, to solve challenges in a different way, and to also take things that are being used by others and applying them to our own businesses. That's what today is about with our talk, under the heading of The Future of Retail is Under Construction, which it absolutely is. And the topic of today is going to be focusing on AI. So we're going to be exploring how AI is being used, how it's solving challenges in the store, online, how it's redefining the way that we shop, but also how retailers are using it for their own businesses and how they're driving their businesses forward for growth. This is probably the hottest topic in the world right now. I don't know how many of you know this, but over $75 billion alone will be spent this year by venture capitalists on AI-driven startups. It's exploding, but we also have wonderful people who are already in the space, who are swimming deep in the waters of AI and doing remarkable things, and we have many of those here today speaking. So, yeah, we have a great lineup of speakers, people from AI-podden, the AI framework, to Robot Minds, Indivd, Microsoft, the AI Sustainability Center, and also Peltarian. My name is Adrian McDonald. I'm the CEO of a company called Adway. We're also an AI-driven company. We focus on social recruitment. So we're a SaaS company and using AI to find wonderful passive talent all around the world. But I'm not here to talk about myself. I'm also one of the co-owners of Epicenter. And so I'm really excited to be here and to hear from all these remarkable speakers that we have today. A little bit about today, just so before I invite the first speaker up. We have a bunch of presentations, so we're going to be hearing from all these people from these wonderful companies who are here to inspire us, to challenge you, and to give you some of their own learnings. We will try to make it as interactive as we can as well. So on the first three presentations, after the first three presentations, we will have a Q&A. So we have people online. We have over 200 people who've signed up online, so they can also put questions in there. Linus will be moderating the Q&A, and we'll also do things a little bit on the fly for all of you here in person here at Epicenter Store. I can also mention that at the very end of the last session of today's event is also going to be turned into a podcast as well. So we have a moderated talk there, and there'll be some Q&A after that where you can ask questions from some of the previous speakers, the previous presenters as well. So maybe without further ado, I'd like to invite our first speaker up so we can get right into it. You want to hear from them, not me. So the first speaker we have today, who's going to be giving us a bit of a teaser and inspiring us with some new thoughts, things that he's seeing in the retail space with AI. He's the founder of Bitynamics. He's also the editor at large for AI-podden. Please welcome to the stage Ather Gattami. The floor is yours, Ather.
Thank you, Andrea. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you, Coco, Linus, and Malin for arranging the event, and also everyone else here. So I'm here, as Adrian mentioned, to give you a teaser about what you can do in the future of AI. Some of it is like in the near future, and some of it in the far, possibly. So here is a very nice chart from McKinsey & Company. This is actually a little bit old, so I think these numbers have grown since then. This is the value of AI, or the value that AI will create in the next 20 years. As you see here, there are two big balloons, marketing and supply chain of over $1 trillion each. There are some other very interesting areas like HR, for instance, how you can recruit people in a smart way. That's about $100 billion. So the value that AI might create could be huge. Now let me touch on the problem of supply chain. I guess many of you in retail are seeing a lot of challenges within the supply chain. It's actually leading possibly to some inflation nowadays. So this topic is very important. So just to give you a picture why it's so hard. So how hard can it be to distribute 25 packages in a truck for a company, say like H&M? It's actually extremely complex problem. There are really 15 quadrillion ways of doing that. So 15 quadrillion, that's 24 zeros. So the complexity, there is no way that we can find optimal solutions with a computer. So we need to find some other ways to go through that. And AI could be a solution where they actually learn from past experience and getting better and better at doing the logistics optimization. So, for instance, the problem of order prediction, you would like to make sure that you don't have too much of stuff in your stocks or not too little because you want to satisfy the customers. So you can see here, 2015, the cost of overstocking was about $500 billion, and understocking is over $600 billion. So just the losses due to over or understockings are already over $1 trillion for 1 year. And this is actually a problem that Amazon has realized very early, and Amazon is probably the champions of logistics optimization. So what they do is that they really predict the orders up to 18 months ahead of time. They really keep track of all items, how the customers behave, depending on seasonality, what kind of product it is. And actually, now with the challenges with supply chains in the world, there's some people, at least in the US, saying that one should really bring the head of supply chain at Amazon and making them take some time leave at Amazon and work for the US government to actually help with the logistics optimization because they are so good at it and very successful, I have to say. The future, I think, would be to interact a lot with customers. And as you know, AI is a lot about data. So if you don't have data, it's very hard to do stuff. So you'd like to interact with your customers a lot to understand their wants and needs, and maybe even before they even know it. So actually, we are already collecting a lot of data if you are running some kind of e-commerce because it's digital. But then there's this challenge of collecting data when you're in store. I mean, I think it's not possible to have people interacting with customers and try to memorize what each customer wants and what their preferences are. So maybe, I don't know, this is very visionary. Maybe the future could be something like this. Maybe you can have a robot like this robot Sophia, which was developed in Hong Kong by a Hong Kong startup. And this robot is digital, so it can actually communicate with the customers. So actually, I'm going to play a video showing a demonstration of this robot at the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. So this actually totally improvised. It's not rehearsed. It's live, and you can actually see at Jimmy Fallon's reaction that he was pretty surprised by the performance.
Jimmy,
Uh-huh.
would you like to play a game of rock, paper, scissors, robot style?
Sure.
Okay, let's get this game going. Show me your hand to start. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. I won. This is a good beginning of my plan to dominate the human race. Just kidding.
Yeah. You are incredible. It's so nice to meet you, Sophia.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Friend me on Facebook.
I will, yeah. All right. Sophia, everybody, thank you so much for bringing.
So, I mean, of course, this is probably a little bit, I mean, they have figured out a certain number of conversations that could occur, and they've been able to program the robot. But part of it is really a lot of AI behind it. I think it's hard just to take into account every possible conversation that could have occurred. Now, once we collect a lot of data, I think, I mean, there have been a lot of talk of personalization. This is nothing new, really, but I still see very few companies that really succeed with that. So here we see, for instance, this is my book recommendations from Amazon, which is partially why they have been so successful, because they really understand what the customer want. We have similar thing when it comes to other companies like Netflix that understand what kind of show you would like to watch next. And actually, I'm mostly impressed by our own Swedish company, Spotify. They started with their Discover Weekly and other recommendations about 5 years ago. And I have to say that the quality have been increasing exponentially. I think that's partially because I have been interacting a lot with Spotify, and they have been collecting a lot of data. As a matter of fact, I get recommendations of songs that I had way before Spotify was running. That's really when I was using MP3. And they finding these songs, and I really get surprised that I get these songs recommended. So what they do is that they not only check what I've been listening to, but by giving recommendations that are random, they might see maybe, oh, I don't listen to this song. They also collect data about what I don't like, not only what I like. And that's why they managed to give me recommendations on some songs that I've not heard, but that I could really like immediately. So I think this is really the future. I think this is still in its infancy. And one part that I think many companies don't think of is the interaction part. It's not only that you have your data and you try to build something, but also you want to collect new data. You want to interact with the customer to make them input more data than they usually do, and hopefully they will get more out of it. From another point of view, if you're a company, a retailer, say you're producing clothing whatsoever, you would also like to understand what you don't have. So it's not only optimizing what kind of products you have, but you would also like to identify gaps in your products. So one of I think, in my opinion, one of the companies that do this very well. I don't know to what extent. I don't know if it's AI, but Inditech, so that's Zara and Massimo Dutti. What they really do is that they always vary their products, and in that perspective, they always discover new products that their customers like, and they have been extremely successful with that. So we would also like to have some kind of guided discovery with the help of AI. And here actually I can give you an example with one sentence. So nowadays when I search for something, maybe I type shoes or black shoes, men or something like that. But maybe we would like to have a smarter system where you can have more detailed description. For instance, looking for a long black hoodie with short sleeves. We're not there yet, and I have interacted with several e-commerce companies, and actually they claim that having a smart search where you can actually specify what you want more is much more important than the recommendation system that many companies maybe focus on. And I'm not surprised, because this is really how we describe what we want. We typically, express things in words, and this is something that I miss. This is really based on so-called natural language processing, but it requires some work also at the company side, that they really to understand how they describe their products in order to make it searchable. We have seen that one of the balloons was about marketing. Marketing is very big. I think the future will be AI-driven when it comes to copywriting. Right now, we have some really smart people working at a company. They know the products and the company well, and they basically, based on experience, roughly understand, how to pick their words, what kind of sentiment they would like to have in the messages, the pictures, the colors. But this is very complex. So if you really would like to improve that, I think you should use artificial intelligence, where you can really understand what kind of words, what kind of sentiments, depending on what kind of customer, the age, where they live, if this is a man or a woman, etc. So there's so many variables, and I think this is very hard for humans to do, although maybe there are some really good copywriters, but maybe there are not that many. So if you really want to have a scale on that and improve also on the quality, I believe AI is very useful. There is also a way of having some kind of advertisement digitally. So this is actually an ad that changes depending on the person that looks at it. So it actually improves itself. It's learning from the reaction of the person that looks at it. And you can actually push it even more. How about having an ad by a person that maybe you're familiar with, maybe not, that is actually totally digital, that tells you about the product and describe the product. It could be maybe something like Barack Obama. Maybe you like Barack Obama, you'd like Barack Obama to tell you something about your product. So I can show you, this is a video. This is actually fake, but just to see how well it performs.
It got me thinking about my full-time employees and their ability to survive on $8 an hour in New York City. And foremost in all of our minds has been the loss and the grief felt by the people of Orlando. Most of us don't get our healthcare through the marketplace. We get it through our job, or through Medicare or Medicare. And what you should know is that thanks to the Affordable Care Act, your coverage is better today than it was before. Women can get free checkups, and you can't get charged more just for being a woman. To give his employees come together to pass a common, there's a bill that would boost America in very, very hard times.
Some progress, at least within the small confines of the legal community. I think it's real important.
Here we go. President Barack Obama, when you're giving a speech, make sure you use a lot of pauses.
America's businesses have created 14.5 million new jobs over 75 straight months.
We're developing technology.
So this is really, some way of you can maybe the future. You just create your digital figure that really speaks to a certain person that you want to make an ad with. And this is just a picture. For me, the wheels here are AI, and you should not really wait for implementing AI because things could move much faster. And finally, if you really like to learn more about AI, I would recommend the AI podcast, AI-podden. So we'll actually record a couple of episodes in the context of this event, but also there are plenty of other episodes where you can have a lot of learnings. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thank you.
Stay here.
Great.
Thank you, Ather.
Thank you.
No, stay here. Stay here with us.
All right,
I think
okay.
there's probably a bunch of burning questions. We have nearly something like 221 people or something online. Linus, let's hand to you. Maybe there are some questions you've found already.
We haven't gotten the audience started in cyberspace yet, but working on it. But I'm trying to get them to answer what they believe. What within AI do they think will impact retail the most? So I can happily hear your thoughts on that.
I really think that actually the two big balloons that we see, I think it's marketing and logistics optimization for sure.
Okay, great.
Maybe I can, on the back of that, tell us a little bit more, like, what are some of the things you've seen in the logistics space specifically? Like, we see so many different things happening with autonomous vehicles and things like that, but it's more than that. Obviously, it's things within warehousing. And
exactly.
Tell us a little bit more on
I mean, just to give you a picture, for instance, when you transport stuff, you have, big containers, and what happens is that you have some person that really points, okay, put this in here, put this in there, etc. So if you have cameras that actually look at the different packages and it knows the size of containers, it maybe can tell you the order of how to put stuff to optimize the volume of things. Another thing, so actually I have been consulting for Kappahl once upon a time, and the way they do packaging, it's really random. They have T-shirts, maybe 5 small, X large, 5 large, 10 medium, 6 small, etc. And they just put it in one package, and then they transport to different stores, which means that the distribution of the content is not really proportional to what the stores really need, because the packages are determined beforehand. But if there is some kind of prediction, they really know this is really packaged for this store, then you don't need to have overstocking in one place and understocking in another place.
Wonderful. Other questions online? Maybe we have some here from the audience physically. Does anyone have a burning question for Ather? There must be some. Otherwise, I'm going to take all the space. No questions? Maybe then, there's one, okay.
I mean, in AI, you rely on data and the knowledge of the person that you're trying to market something to or something with. How much do you rely on, let's say, internal data versus external data, like using the likes of Google and the databases there rather than using your own set of data? Is that a
You should definitely.
I'm going to repeat the question because people online may not have heard. The question really was, what types of data sources should you use, particularly online? Should it be first-party data, things that you own, or other sources of data from companies like Facebook or Google, whoever? What can people take advantage of and harness?
Yeah. So enhancement of data or data enrichment, there are many ways of calling it. I think it's very important. So you can any kind of external data that you could use, you should use, I think.
Linus?
Get them to come in with questions.
What I see a lot of, maybe one final question before we move on the agenda. I've seen a lot of, there's lots of articles, there's lots of people talking around the trends of AI in retail. You see a bunch of things. What can you tell us about things that are happening in store? Because naturally when we think about technology and AI and the shifts with the pandemic, we're thinking online, but in-store retail is still strong. There are still wonderful things happening in that space. What are some of the great examples or trends you're seeing when it comes to AI for in-store experiences? Perhaps both for consumer or retailers themselves.
Absolutely. I think first of all you need to digitalize the store, the physical store, and then once you do it, then you can collect data and things can become much more digital. Maybe I don't need to ask someone for, do you have this in size something? Maybe I just can scan and see what's actually in here, or maybe in a store nearby. Maybe there's a lot of talk about the omni-channel, but I think like some kind of the omni-store, it shouldn't really matter if I'm in the physical store or online, because I've done a lot of searches online, so maybe this store should know something about me anyway, and when I enter, maybe I can get recommendations right away in my cell phone telling me, all right, try this jacket, try these trousers, try this shirt, you probably like this and that. So I really don't need just to randomly walk around to find something.
We're probably going to explore that even more with Fredrik from Indivd, who's doing some wonderful things in store with AI. So we'll save that, and we can go deeper with Fredrik. You're going to be hosting a panel or moderating a panel discussion at the very end with plenty of our speakers. That's going to be the podcast. So there's 1,000 applications of AI. I guess you're going to dive into some of those with some other experts.
I'm sure it's going to be great.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, we'll see you later in the agenda.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Adrian.
Ather. Thank you. We saw in one of Ather's videos a wonderful robot on Jimmy Fallon's live show. Robotics is exploding. I mean, there's different applications, from human interactions to solving big challenges in schools, for healthcare, and we actually have a robotics expert. She's the CEO and founder of Robot Minds. We might even get a glimpse of her robot here. For those of you who are here at Epicenter, you can play around with it afterwards. But please welcome to the stage Elena Sjödin from Robot Minds. Elena, please tell us who you are, tell us a little bit about Robot Minds, and then the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, I perhaps would like to introduce my friend here, Mr. Q, as we call him. So we are not producing hardware ourselves. We usually source it from different companies. And that's not a Sophia robot. However, I would say that it's quite cool robot to experience, and we see a big potential with those type of robots. You can afterwards go and talk to him, and with all the respect to David Hansen, the creator of Sophia robots and the Hansen team, I think that we always need to think about cost via technology and find the solutions which actually will help us introduce some technology for quite reasonable costs. So I will talk about robots, but before I'll do the deep dive into robotics, I actually would like to approach this topic from a bit different perspective. I don't know, how's my presentation? Because, yeah? Okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah. So I would like to talk about a new era of technology, the fourth industrial revolution. And fourth industrial revolution going to change, and actually already changing, the way we live, work, and spend our free time. The transformation is, the evolution of the technology is exponential, the pace of it. And the transformation, the scope of it and complexity is so huge that we never experienced it before. So we see the transition and fusion of various technologies which coming together and slowly eliminating the borders between physical, digital, and biological worlds. And of course, all this is going to affect all the industries on the planet. So we already see that there are some disruptions happening in existing industry structures, forcing companies actually to change the way they create, produce, distribute, and promote their products. Sometimes the change and complexity of the change which companies require to take to be able to adapt to the current market conditions and demands is quite complex, and they're not capable of solving it by themselves. So that's the reason why recently we saw the trend of creation of innovative ecosystem, where a lot of players come into kind of collaboration and trying to find a solution for the common problems. We see a lot of examples in autonomous mobility, for example, where even sometimes rivals need to join forces to be able to make a change and lobby some regulations or find a solution to electrification of the vehicles, for example. But let's talk now about how fourth industrial revolution changed in retail. And we see that there are 5 major technological drivers which making this change. And robots actually been a big part of it, which until recent years been kind of underrepresented, I would say. However, the COVID situation brought robotics to the forefront of the retail. And that happened because we needed to find the new ways how we can serve our customers and also eliminate the risk of transferring disease and eliminate human-to-human interaction. Unfortunately, in Sweden, we do not experience much of robotics. But it's not necessarily a bad thing, because what we can do, we can learn from successful and unsuccessful examples, which is actually happening all over the world. And I'm going to show you some cases, basically from US, how robots can be used and being used. So one of example is creating personalized experience. Imagine that you need to fix a porch at your home. And what you do? You jump to the car and you drive to the nearest construction shop and trying to find for some screws and other things which you need. And when you come to the construction shop, you're lost. Sorry, the slide. You're lost because you do not know where the things are laying. And it's also difficult to find personnel. And then when you finally find someone who can help you actually to navigate you through the shop, then sometimes they're saying, sorry, we cannot answer your questions because it's not our department, you have to talk to that guy. And this is kind of frustrating. But it's also understandable because it costs a lot to have a lot of employees. And it's also impossible for a person to remember all the items which they have in the shop and information about those items, especially if it's a construction shop. That's not the case for robot, because you upload the information and robot will always remember and always be updated. So robot can provide you actually with information and also guide you to the point. It can also think and remember that most of the customers who is buying some certain screws, they're also buying some other things usually, and can remind you, would you like to have those items as well? Or let's say we take the situation when you go to shop which sells cosmetic products, and you remember the shop, and robot remembers that you buy some certain products for certain skin type. So as soon as you enter in shop next time, and if you, for example, robot knows that there is a promotion on the items which is similar to your previous purchases, the robot can always tell you about that. So you can also use robot as a promotion. And a good thing with the robots is that they always remember the data which they get from the people. So when we've been talking with the previous presentation that we actually lack in the data in physical shops, the robots is actually one of the solutions how this data can be gathered. And we also saw in numerous researchers and numerous cases, which even we did with Robot Minds, is that people sometimes tend to be more open when they communicate with robot rather than employee. Another example how robots is bringing efficiency and increasing customer experiences in the shop is scanning products. And I would say that one of the pioneers in this industry was company Bossa Nova, which something like around 5 years ago, quite fascinating story actually. As soon as they released their product, which is supposed to scan the shelves and notify personnel if there are some out-of-stock items or wrong pricing, they actually received the contract after a couple of pilots with Walmart, who plan to introduce those type of robots in thousands of their shops. After introduction of few hundreds of Bossa Nova products, last year actually, unfortunately, Walmart discontinued the cooperation with Bossa Nova, explaining it by the fact that they found different technology which suits them better. So Bossa Nova example actually inspired a lot of companies coming out with similar technologies with a different twist. And of course, when Walmart decided to discontinue the cooperation, market kind of got a bit shaken, and everyone had a lot of questions if there is a future for the robots in retail and what is going on. However, like when we try to analyze what has happened, there are different factors involved into that unsuccessful example. One of them, that leadership in Walmart who was responsible for this change. Of course, that is quite important part to play. Then we also have to remember that Walmart basically was the major, if not the only one, customer for Bossa Nova. And all the developments which company been doing, it was in cooperation with Walmart. However, when Bossa Nova been deployed, they were looking at the perspective how they can solve one problem, basically missing items and wrong pricing. But they forgot to think about how actually this technology can be a part of entire digital architecture which shop have, how it can bring more value, because as we know, Walmart, they're investing heavily into technology and robotics as well. And the third factor was that, as you see, the robot was quite bulky, and a lot of customers had troubles in going through the aisles with their shopping carts because they needed to wait when this robot will pass. That, of course, created a lot of disruption, and people didn't like that experience. But there are many successful examples where similar technology continue to grow, and there are a number of companies which, like day by day, you hear that they're landing large contracts with a number of retailers in the US and all over the world. One of the examples, for example, Robot Marty, which not only detects the missing items and products which have a different wrong placing, but also can detect spills and other things which happen in, like, for example, on the floor of the shop. Then it can send the signal to the staff or to the cleaning robot, and things will be taken care of. Another thing which producers of Marty thought of is how actually customers will interact and how they will accept those robots. So they try to make those funny Google eyes, and even though that the robots looked bulky, but everyone seemed to like him. Then we also have one of the numerous examples again, Lovebot. Besides scanning the shelves, they also were able to make sure that robot can provide information to customers where you can find some certain items or explain about some certain items. And it's also been connected to the system to make sure that the product's position at the place where customer used to have it. So you see that when you come into the situation where you're looking from a bit broader perspective, then it's much more value we see in the technology. And then the real return on investment also have to be calculated on the right way. Some of the other examples, how we're trying to increase engagement with robotics. So imagine in the future all those shops without salespeople in it, and you have to bring attention to some products. So companies already now starting to experiment from, instead of buying some certain positions on the shelves in the shop, they actually renting places on the robots, and robot traveling around trying to find people telling about the product and so on. So it's quite interesting example. Then also we saw during the COVID time, we saw that it was a rise of autonomous delivery vehicles. And there was both new players coming to the market, but also companies like KiwiBot, which been on the market for years, and Starship Technologies. They actually been increasing their fleet and more or less operating in quite a lot of places, both in US and also in Europe. But the funny thing and really interesting thing that example from Alibaba Group. A couple of weeks ago, Alibaba Group delivered 1 million parcels. So they reached the point of 1 million parcels deliveries with the autonomous robots, which they introduced slightly more than a year ago. So while we're trying to play and test different technologies here, the things are already happening in other parts of the world. It means that we have to kind of speed up and don't be afraid to try. And actually, the thing is that with robots, the demand for the robotics and for all this emerging technology will also come from the market. Because if we'll think about younger generation, for them it's natural environment to be around the technology. They don't mind to go and talk to the robots. They actually trust the technology much more than they trust people, because they see the efficiency and they see how quality how good quality of the like replies they might get and information they can source and so on. So, so from that point, it's really important to think about those factors. Of course, robotics is going to bring enormous potential and possibilities to retail sector and to all other sectors. However, it's really important to think about robotic from a perspective of solutions where we look at entire architecture or digital kind of environment. So we make sure that it's integrate and it's bring value on the whole process, on the whole value chain. One of the things which is also important to remember that it's still kind of in a form of playground. So it means that not all the companies producing robots, they really know how to apply and what is the best case scenarios they can get with robotics. At the same time, the market itself not aware because it's new technology. So we have to be able and we have to dare to experiment and test what is the best scenarios we can create and be open-minded about it. Okay, so yeah, so thank you for the information. And if you would like, okay, yeah, so if you would like to interact with our robot, you're more than welcome. You can test and see how it can operate in different environments. And yeah, basically communicate with him. Don't be afraid.
Stay here, Elena. Wonderful. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. Clearly a lot of inspiring things happening around the world that we're not seeing here as much, but it's moving fast. Linus, I know there's a whole load of questions online, so let's field some from the guests online first.
Yeah, so the audience is getting awake now, so definitely got the discussion started. First question, what job or task would you see that the robots will replace at first?
I wouldn't say that we have to look at this at the robotics from the way that they're actually going to replace any jobs. I would say that we actually have to look how robots can complement the human employees, how they can make our life easier, how they, for example, can take away. You know, we've been testing that robot. We've been testing at the hotel reception, and the interesting thing was that everyone was a bit worried how the personnel will take it. But after a while, we understood. Actually, they came to us, and we tried to talk to them and figure out so what was their impression about it. And I clearly remember it was quite interesting moment that one woman said that, you know, after a couple of days, I understood that all that time I was like a robot myself, because I kept answering the same questions over and over and over again. And then when we got Mr. Q, he actually helped me to source out those questions, and customers were really willing to talk to him. And then when they had the more complex questions or things I needed to help, I was not so tight and were able to provide them really good quality answers and provide with good help. So I would say that we always have to look at the robotics how it's actually complement and make the things better, rather than being afraid of what it can do bad. So, and here's also kind of mental thing, because our generation, we've been unfortunately disturbed, I would say, by Hollywood movies, which haven't been promoting robots from the good side. So we always think about bad things. We always think about how it will affect also our, like us from the personal perspective, what data it remembers and so on. And when young generations interfering with robots, they look only about opportunities. And of course we have to think about framework of making sure that everything is, all the security in place. But possibilities is actually huge. So.
Great, thank you. And next question is more about what do you think is the threshold for that retail haven't implemented robotics yet? Why don't we have like robotics everywhere?
Yeah, well, I would say that there are actually numerous factors to that, because it just recently now, when we talk about service and social robots, those robots which we see in a while, so to say, which interacts around us people, the technology only now became, made it possible for those robots to be smart and useful. And then in some countries, you see that they've been a bit more open-minded towards welcoming this technology, both from the regulative perspective, but also from the user perspective. So those factors, I think that they're kind of going to change and shift eventually our behavior when we'll see the efficiency robotics bring to our life and to our business. So, and also I think that it's important that we kind of stop thinking that we kind of stop thinking about straightforward return on investment. When we look into robotics, we will try to take big picture into consideration and think how we actually can change the way we serve our customers with the help of robots, or how efficient we can make our operations and so on. So I think that it's much broader perspective which is important to take into consideration when you're evaluating technology.
Thank you. There are a bunch of questions, but I will pick an important one. I think that will be super relevant for our audience. If you are a retailer today and you want to open the door to the world of robots, how would you get started and where?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I would say that it's not only the question about retailers, but I would say in general as well, because when we introduce a new technology, when we're working with innovation, especially emerging technology, it's really important to kind of think of step-by-step process and don't push all the robots acting in different positions at the same time. You kind of really have to define what are the biggest issues and what is the biggest hustle you have in a company, and how robots can help you to approach this. So, and then you take a robot and kind of test run it with some small scope of the pilot project, and then you kind of look at the effect of that pilot project, and then you might take another pilot project and look at the situation from a different perspective, or try different robots. So you really have to think about this step-by-step approach, and look not from the side that I just want to have robots. Look from the side how robots can actually solve you problems which you already have today.
Thank you.
I think we have 1 minute left. Maybe there's a quick question. No? We're going to have to park that. We're going to have you come back, Elena. I think there's so many questions. It's clear that there's loads. We're going to also, maybe it's also a special note to mention that we're also going to connect all of you, everyone online, with our speakers. You'll get a recording of this presentation, and I think you can follow up with all the questions that have come through. Thank you so much for this inspiring talk. Really wonderful to hear about all the different applications. It's clear we didn't even scratch the surface. Yeah. So I look forward to having you back again sometime. Thank you, Elena.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me, and it was a great pleasure to be on physical event.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if Mr. Q is going to stay here with us, but that's fine. It's so excited to play around with it. Our next speaker, if you remember back to when Ather was talking, he was speaking, we touched a little bit on what's happening in the physical space. Our next guest speaker from Indivd is the co-founder and product owner of Indivd, Fredrik Hammargården. He's actually solving a lot of problems in store with some wonderful technology. I don't want to brand you the Google Analytics of the physical space, but it's kind of along those lines. Please come, welcome to the stage, Fredrik. Tell everyone who you are, what Indivd does, and the problems you're solving.
Thank you.